Now for the second half of our programme from Cheadle and Gatley. One of our members, Don Hyde, is chairman of the Lancastrian Theatre Organ Trust. Lancastria covers Lancashire and Cheshire, and theatre organs are the sort of Wurlitzer organs that you used to see coming out the pit in cinemas, and they're getting rarer and rarer, and lots of places now are getting rid of them. Well, there's about 30,000 pieces in an organ, and Don's group has about 6,000 members. It's quite a wealthy group. It organises concerts in quite major concert halls in the northwest area. And this is a film that Don Hyde made about one particular organ, but it also picks up quite a lot of stuff about where the Wurlitzer organ came from, its origins, and that has a lot of Cheshire significance as well, as you'll hear. This film has a lot of local interest for us up here, and it's actually slightly out of date, but so after this we'll show you a little postscript which Don has made. But for now, here it is, and it's called Paramount Performance.
On the 6th of October 1930 at 7 p.m, a magnificent new cinema named the Paramount opened in Manchester. The cinema, situated on Oxford Street, was built by Gerard and Sons of Swinton. Walter Pierce of London installed Britain's largest Wurlitzer pipe organ. Henry Crowdson was the resident organist from the opening until 1938. On the opening night, the organ was played by Charles Smart. The film showing was a musical called The Love Parade, starring Maurice Chevalier. Here Nigel Ogden is at that Wurlitzer, playing a selection of music from The Love Parade, that opening film. The 1940s saw the cinema being sold to the J. Arthur Rank Group and becoming the Odeon Manchester. Then, in the early 1970s, it was decided to keep in tune with modern trends and convert the Odeon into a multi-cinema, an operation that required the removal of the Wurlitzer organ, as this did not fit in with the plans. The organ was removed by the Lancastrian Theatre Organ Trust and moved about 300 yards away to the Free Trade Hall, where over a period of 4 years it was reinstalled.
What is it about Wurlitzers which attracts people?
Is it the quality of the workmanship? Just look at the carving on the end of this console. Or is it the versatility of the instrument? Don't be fooled by this array of stops and keyboards. Behind this facade is an organ very similar to a church organ, but it's an organ whose sound can be completely changed by the touch of a button. Or is it the fascinating story of Wurlitzers? Although Wurlitzers came from America, they were invented here in Cheshire. On the 9th of February 1859, at Hooton Grange on the Wirral, Robert Hope Jones was born. The family was musical, and Robert was encouraged to study music. By the age of 10, he was choirmaster and organist at Easton Parish Church. He was educated at Birkenhead School. At age 17, Robert was apprenticed at Laird's shipyard, but later in 1881 he joined the Lancashire and Cheshire Telephone Company and became the chief engineer. In 1889 he left the telephone company and, using his newly gained electrical expertise, set up his own organ building company in Birkenhead, financed by Thomas Threlfall, a brewer of Liverpool. During this time, he invented and patented an electrical action for pipe organs. He also invented several types of organ pipe. Unfortunately, he was not a good businessman and had several business failures. He was also homosexual, and being caught in a compromising situation only 8 years after the imprisonment of Oscar Wilde for a similar reason, Hope Jones left the country in a hurry and emigrated to America. In America, he eventually joined the Rudolph Wurlitzer Company and became its chief design engineer. All his patents were assigned to Wurlitzers, and thus was born the Wurlitzer theatre organ. Wurlitzer's success, borne out by the number of installations worldwide, was due solely to Hope Jones's patents. I'm standing in the solo chamber of the Manchester Wurlitzer, and this pipe is one of the original Hope Jones pipes made in 1894. You can see how the pipes made later in 1930 look very similar and are in fact from the same patent. I'm now standing in the main chamber, and this is one of the largest pipes in the organ. It is called a diaphone, and again is the invention of Robert Hope Jones. This is the only surviving original diaphone from Robert Hope Jones' first organ. It is also the subject of a patent which included the foghorn, and this was the basis of the foghorn that is used in every lighthouse throughout the world. Behind the tuning slide is an inscription referring to the first pipe organ. The Wurlitzer is on the move again. The Free Trade Hall is to be demolished and a new hotel built on the site. The first theatre organ installed in a music hall was at Tranmere in 1884 by Robert Hope Jones. So this Wurlitzer is now to be reinstalled in the Hume Hippodrome Music Hall. The theatre is to be restored to the splendour and decor that prevailed when it was built in 1902, and the Hume Hippodrome is to become a living museum and national centre of music hall. Support for this project has come from many quarters.
Hi, I'm Paul Daniels, and I'm looking at a book about old theatres. 800 of them have gone, and there's no way they'll ever be brought back. But there's one standing, it's called Hume Hippodrome, and it's a sleeping beauty. This is a beautiful building, and it's just waiting to come back to life. Because a lot of them, as you know, were taken and used as bingo halls and all that. That's not a bad idea, because it did keep them going a while. So now, if you, in any way whatsoever, can help this plan that will bring it back to life, not just in the evening, but for all day long, so it'll be a part of a tour, it'll have workshops, it's going to give a lot of work to a lot of people, both inside and outside the show.
I love the Hume Hippodrome. It was a cosy theatre. It was a nice place to see. And if there was any talent around, any new talent, you could go there and you could see it sort of developing. The first time I ever saw Ken Dodd was at the Hume Hippodrome. And there was nothing more certain that this was a star in the making. And you could go there and you could see him practicing his craft twice nightly.
If you can help, then do it, and bring this great theatre back to life.
Lots and lots of people made it there. And it would be a pity not to have it.
In September this year, with Nigel Ogden at the console, the people of Manchester said au revoir to the Wurlitzer until it plays again, about 4 years' time from now, in the auditorium of a National Music Hall Museum, the Hume Hippodrome.
Well, the music hall idea never did get off the ground, they never raised the money for it, so Don's group were left with this organ. And as you can see, they're quite complex operations. It so happened about that time that Stockport Town Hall, which has quite a big concert area, didn't have an organ, so they offered it to the town hall, and the town hall said, yeah, of course we'll have it, because as Don's group fine do, all these places, they love to have these Wurlitzers put into their places now. So they got lottery grants, quite a lot of lottery money. They had to dig out quite a lot of the town hall to make room for all the pipes, and finally it went in. And so Don's just made a little postscript just to finish off this story of this particular organ. So all we can say it's called is the postscript.
First thing that impresses you is the fact that it now looks as good as it did when it first went in, and that's a long time ago when it went in. Well, it wasn't the Odeon then, was it? It was the Paramount.
Yes.
And that was 1930. And the quality that's in the organ now, it's showing just as much. I think we made a marvellous job of installing it in here. It's great. It's going to be a wonderful thing. It's going to be a big asset to Stockport.
good. Good, a bit more. There we go.
Now one with it all off.
Right.
Take it off completely now and take another one.
Yeah.
You're talking about the cooker on the oven, okay?
There's something else going on. Right, here we are.
Like that.
Wait a minute. Come on.
Push.
It's quite steady now with that extra weight on, Don. Much steadier.
I'm playing last going down the shot.
All right. For the console.
I could have done with that when I worked.
Well, I don't think the Lancastrian Theatre Organ Trust technical team ever thought they'd have to remove this huge Wurlitzer yet again and reinstall it in another new home, but that's what happened, and it's now arrived at its third home in Stockport Town Hall, which to my mind is the best home the organs ever had. Yes, it sounded wonderful in the Odeon, it sounded magnificent in the Free Trade Hall, but I haven't yet thought of a word for how it sounds here, but it's a nice one when I think of it.
I'm the Chief Executive of Stockport Council. When I first started a few years ago, one of the councillors said to me, your predecessor was very keen on swimming, and we ended up with a swimming pool in Stockport. What are you keen on and that we're going to end up with? And I cast around for something I could say by way of an answer that we were bound not to get in the town hall. So I said, well, I used to play the organ, and lo and behold, 5 years later, here we have the opening of the Wurlitzer. But I claim no personal credit for that at all. I really am not suggesting for a moment that it was anything to do with me. I said that because I didn't think it would happen, but I'm absolutely delighted. And I think the Lancastrian Theatre Organ Trust has done an absolutely superb job. It's a magnificent asset for the town hall, but even more so, it's a magnificent asset for Stockport and the whole of the Northwest. I'm over the moon. Although, please don't tell anybody, I do actually play the organ a bit myself. I'm a lousy organist, but I'm really looking forward to sneaking in here late at night when everybody else has gone home from time to time and having a little bit of a go myself when nobody's.
As we come to the new millennium, it gives me great pleasure this evening to accept the Wurlitzer organ on permanent loan to Stockport Council.
The speeches are over. Let's now present to you the start of Wurlitzer 2000. And who better to present the organ musically than somebody who's had a long association with it over many years. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the one and only Nigel Ogden.
So that's Don Hyde and the organs. He's typical of the sort of members with a very wide other interests that I was talking about earlier, and so we get lots of different films in the club and people with different experiences of filmmaking. Now to someone very different from Don, but actually a friend of his, Trevor Bradshaw. He joined us in 1992 purely as a video member, and at that point he was doing all the horrible things that people do, waving the camera around, hose piping as we call it, zooming in and out, long continuous shots. And it's very encouraging really. I shouldn't say this, but it's very nice to watch people like Trevor improving in their filmmaking over the years, and I'm sure you've got some members like that as well. And he says himself, he thanks the club really for it. He's very grateful to the club that over the years he's seen other people's films, seen good films, seen bad films, learned what he wants to do, what he doesn't want to do. He tends to film as an observer, Trevor. All his films are very much just using the camera purely as a set of eyes. But he's learnt all the crafts of editing and such like, and has Adobe Premiere and all that sort of stuff. He's quite a world traveller, and this is a short film of his that we just show as part of the club programme regularly. It hasn't won any awards, but it's just a nice sort of exotic subject, and is just very interesting in itself. And it's interesting even for its title, which is Te Wakariwariwa, and I will say that again just to show you that I've learnt how to say it properly, and then you can say it after me. Te Wakariwariwa.
The unpronounceable name on the notice board is usually shortened to Te Wakariwa Riwa, and it is here at Rotorua that the New Zealand Arts and Crafts Institute is based. Surrounding the institute is the Te Wakariwa Riwa Thermal Reserve. The area looks as if it is on fire, and I suppose in a way it is. However, it is steam that erupts from the ground as water evaporates over the hot lava rocks. This wonderland of nature houses New Zealand's greatest concentration of geothermal activity, evidence of which is widespread. Exploding geysers, bubbling mud pools, colourful crystal formations and eerie steam vents all lie on the city's doorstep. Rotorua has now become world famous for this volcanic activity. Just like porridge should be made, no? Visitors have been coming here for the past 150 years, but the Maoris were here perhaps up to 1,000 years earlier than that. Visitors to the reserve are given maps to guide them round the various attractions and warn them about stepping off the well-marked paths. Some areas are more active than others. The ground is quite warm to the touch, but some rocks are obviously a lot hotter than others, which boil and belch steam and fill the air with the stench of sulphur. To those who do not know what that smells like, try sniffing at a well-boiled rotten egg. 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees centigrade, whichever system you use, putting your hand in there would boil it alive. The wooden path guides on the ground gradually turned to charcoal with the heat, so whoever surveyed the path certainly knew his way around. The whole of Rotorua is living on this waiting to erupt volcano, but none of the locals seem the least perturbed, and nearly every house or hotel has its own free hot water system. We stayed at a small motel on the main through route through the town. There were 2 hot tubs. They were about 6 foot square and 4 foot deep. The water was red hot, crystal clear, but stank of sulphur. But it was lovely to relax in after a hard day's sightseeing. However, there is a downside to everything. The massive expansion of the town and its tourist trade has meant that the natural water is running low, and the geysers do not erupt as frequently as they once did. One often sees signs erected by the authorities to warn the unwary of the obvious, but this one seemed just a little incongruous in an area where everything is so highly dangerous. The Thermal Reserve is, of course, the ideal place to learn all about natural history and how the world was formed. So naturally, the local schools take full advantage of this spectacular natural event. Standing by this mud pool and thinking of breakfast, we heard English voices. When we spoke to them, it turned out that they once lived off Bridge Lane in Bramhall. They now live in Durham. Does anyone recognise them? Unfortunately, we never got their names. For spectacular natural volcanic activity, Te Whakarewa Rewa cannot be beaten.
And just to show you I can still say it, Te Whakarewa Rewa. And now on to back to Jerry Clegg. Jerry Clegg made the Woodford film. Jerry is one of the old pros, forgive the phrase, who's joined us. He used to be in the BBC. He was a sound supervisor on one of the BBC Manchester's outside broadcast units. It's all different now, of course, and they don't have in-house outside broadcast units. And we have another member who's a friend of his who was also a sound supervisor on an outside broadcast unit. Jerry also got sort of what you might call bit of Welsh interests, and here's a film, a very different film from Woodford, a rather nice nostalgic film that sets a nice mood about a place he used to go to as a boy on Anglesey, and it's called A Free Spirit in Beaumaris.
The delightful Victorian seaside resort of Llanfyfechan, on the coast of North Wales, has changed very little with the passage of time. Back in the 50s, when I was a boy, my grandmother lived here, and it was here that we used to spend many of our school holidays. We sailed our boats on the splendid model yacht pond and swam in the sea, and always on the horizon, so near and yet so far away, was the mysterious and fascinating Puffin Island. We always longed to have a better look at the island, but the nearest we could approach was a favourite picnic spot called Penman Point, on Anglesey, over there. The island was just across the water from Penman, but we could only ever see the very end of it. In reality, it was as far away as ever, always separated from us by a deep and treacherous sound. A map of the island shows that it's home to a ruined monastery and something called an old telegraph station. How magical it would be to see them. And now it's the summer of 1999, and because of a minor motoring problem, I find myself at a loose end in Beaumaris, with a whole day to while away. A free spirit, just a couple of miles away from Penman Point and that elusive Puffin Island. It's the most glorious summer's day. A lazy day. The sort of day when everybody does their own thing, whatever that may be. Unless, of course, you happen to be a crab. Well, I've decided what I want to do. I'll put to sea and make that long-sought voyage down the strait and across the Sound to Puffin Island and see what I can see. Once on the restless Menai Strait, the day doesn't seem quite as lazy as it did a little while ago, but it is exhilarating, and soon we're cruising towards that mystical island. On the way, we've passed some interesting spots on the land. Over there, in those sheds, they fitted the armament to Sunderland and Catalina flying boats during the war. And that's Penman Priory, a regular place of worship ever since the 12th century. There's Penman Point with its lighthouse and the two distinctive pilot houses. How we loved our picnics and days spent fishing for shrimps over there. Anticipation grows as we approach the island, and it's a magical moment when we first see round the corner parts of the island we've never been able to see close up before. We expect to see lots of puffins, but apparently the island is infested with rats, and sadly they've put paid to most of the puffins. Attempts are being made to try to control the rats, and there are still some puffins, and the island is still a paradise for all manner of seabirds. At last we get our first glimpse of the mysterious old telegraph station. It was used to watch out for ships approaching Liverpool Bay, and then signal their impending arrival onto Liverpool. This was done via a similar station on the Great Orme at Llandudno. Massive semaphores, rather like old-fashioned railway signals, were used, but they've long since been demolished. The whole system was abandoned in 1860 with the coming of the electric telegraph. At the northeast corner of the island, two currents meet, and the sea is very disturbed. Now we're on the lookout for seals. This is their territory. There aren't many about today, but we do get a glimpse of one. Over there. We have a look at the old telegraph station from the other side. And now it's on towards the middle of the island. We find ourselves wondering how people ever manage to get on and off the island, because we've seen no sign ashore of a suitable landing place. We're looking now for evidence of the ancient monastery. And here we may be in for a surprise, because this ruined 6th century building appears to be still standing. In fact, it's been carefully researched and meticulously re-erected stone by stone as part of a university archaeological project. Unfortunately, we can only see the tower, so the island still keeps some of its secrets, at least for the time being. The wind is astern of us now, so the going is easy. It's surprising how it suddenly becomes quite hot. Running downwind, we also make rapid progress back towards Beaumaris, but not quite as rapid as our neighbours, whose crew are anxious to reach the pier first and disembark their passengers before us. All too soon, the delightful little cruise is coming to an end. Never mind, I've been able at last to see places I've wanted to see for half a lifetime. And one day, perhaps in the not too distant future, I'll actually set foot there to complete the story.
A free spirit in Beaumaris was made for yet another 5-minute competition where the theme was the letters M-A-R in sequence in the title, and there it is in Beaumaris. It's clever, isn't it? Well, now over to Richard and Sheila Thacker. Now, Richard and Sheila were members of our club in Cine days back in the 70s. In fact, Richard was chairman for a while. And in the early 80s, they got frustrated with Cine that they couldn't do with it what they wanted to do in sound. Richard was getting quite ambitious and he just didn't have the equipment, and he knew you could go on forever in Cine. Anybody who's ever worked in Cine, sound was very much a great problem. So they left and moved fast forward 10 years or so to the mid-90s, and their families, they've got grandchildren and such like, and they're thinking we want to video them. So they rejoined the club basically to find out what sort of equipment they should get. And Richard talked to lots of members. He bought one of the early digital cameras, and he was quite an early member in our club to have Adobe Premiere. And as soon as he got that, he thought, yeah, I can do now with sound what I want to do. And the film we're going to show you of theirs is a very good example of it. It gets better and better. It won our Film of the Year in 1998. and it's called Spirit of America.
When we eventually decided to cross the Atlantic for the first time, Boston seemed to be a natural starting point to explore New England and some neighbouring attractions, and to enthusiastically search for the true spirit of America.
Like all tourists, we are suckers for a good market. And in Quincy Market, we found the added interest of some very talented buskers.
Boston's rather special in American history. The old State House was where the Declaration of Independence was first read to the people. So where else could Old Ironsides be birthed?
But on with our search for the spirit of America. This is the fall, and so it is leaf peeping time. New England seemed to us to be very reminiscent of England's own green and pleasant land. There are, of course, lots of clapboard houses and churches in the area, since so much timber grows here. One of the things we most wanted to do was to try to seek out what was typically American, to get a flavour of what was peculiar to that great country, the spirit of America. Sometimes the colours of the foliage are almost beyond belief. The beauty is quite breathtaking. Could this be the spirit of America?
Up in Vermont, in the little country village of Woodstock, there seemed to be just a small central commercial area surrounded by trees. When they built the bridge, they built a roof over it to prevent the heavy winter snow from blocking the road.
We called in at the pumpkin farm to see scarecrows and corn dollies, and of course pumpkins. We unfortunately did not have time to sample the pumpkin pie.
It was impossible to pass by Joe Alton's country store without going inside. Was the spirit of America we were seeking to be found here? The inside of the store was a veritable Aladdin's cave. You name it, they'd got it for sale.
So that you can enjoy leaf peeping to the full, New England states operate fall foliage hotlines from mid-September. These tell you where and when the best views are to be seen. But you do have to be quick, because the best displays can sometimes last for as little as only 2 or 3 days.
Now we're down on the coast, in Maine. No, we've not been hunting, nor riding on a train from Bangor. Kennebunkport is a seaside resort typical of the area, very much tourist orientated. But it's the sort of resort which could almost be found anywhere. So we didn't find the spirit of America we were seeking here.
The first tree to bring colour is the red maple, followed by the sugar maple. Then the oaks, sumacs, dogwoods, birches, hickories, and finally beeches.
Here we are in Niagara. Surely we'll find the spirit of America here. A sail on Maid of the Mist is a must. Get suitably kitted out in plastic waterproofs, like a swarm of blue locusts. And then for our boat ride. Wow, that was a fantastically exhilarating experience, truly memorable. And so we asked ourselves, maybe this was the spirit of America. And now we've just time to pick up some postcards of the leaves of New England before heading south. And here, in contrast to the beauty of New England and its leaves, New York is everything you've seen in the movies. This is one busy city. Will we find the spirit of America here, we wonder? One of the most famous landmarks is the Empire State Building. And from the top, the panorama of the whole area is undoubtedly impressive. In Central Park, some energetic types whiz by, whilst others prefer a more leisurely pace. On the east side and the west side, in uptown and down, in the sounds and the smells of New York City, The sights assault you from all sides. Too long to have had your fill of the polluted atmosphere of this frenzied metropolis. So then, it's back to the hotel. We've just time for one last brief trip. So it's on to the Staten Island ferry, waving goodbye to the Manhattan skyline. And then into view comes the Statue of Liberty, given to the United States by the people of France in 1886. Although it's only 145 feet high, it's tremendously impressive. And immediately we feel that we have at last got a taste of the spirit of America.
And then, behind the statue, we see Ellis Island, Isle of Tears, Isle of Hope, where nearly 70 million would-be immigrants pass through the vast waiting rooms, dormitories, and medical examination rooms. For 100 million Americans, Ellis Island evokes memories of family members.
And so the realization dawned that the spirit of America is not in its buildings or in places, but it is the spirit expressed by its people. People from the early pioneers immortalized in Boston to the present-day crowds on a New York sidewalk. People here at the pumpkin farm and at Woodstock, and visiting the shops at the seaside. People in the Blue Queue at Niagara and in Joe Orton's country store. These people together form the true spirit of America. And in our search, we had seen them all, but at the time had not realized the truth.
Well, when you see it again now, it's all rather poignant, isn't it? The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and all that sort of thing. And it's amazing how film very quickly becomes quite significant in different ways that you never dreamed about. But there we are, that's the spirit of America. Richard and Sheila gave us a wonderful evening at the club. We asked them to explain to us how this film came about, because we knew that they'd come home from America, looked at the rushes and thought, they're rubbish. We can't get a film out of that. There's nothing there. And then they thought about it again and they thought, well, what did we feel about America? So they looked at the film again to see if they could make the pictures that they got reflect what they felt about America. And once they got their theme about looking for this spirit of America, which was genuine, they realized they'd now got a strong theme, a hook upon which to spread the whole film, hang the whole film. And they gave us a very interesting evening explaining this to us. We often ask members, as I said at the beginning, to explain about films in length. Ken Ridley has given us 2 very good evenings recently about the making of Lara, A Dream of Lara, and how it developed, and then the technical problems he had making it, and then eventually the computer editing. And these kind of evenings, you can learn an awful lot, and they're also very interesting because they're club members telling us. So that's the programme. We hope you've enjoyed it. It's sort of very typical of the kind of films that our members have been making over the last 2, 3, 4 years. Some of them have been films of the year and some of them haven't, but we like to think they make up quite a nice programme. So that's it. At this stage I normally say thank you for the refreshments, but it doesn't really apply this time. I hope you had good refreshments anyway at half time. So it's been nice to give you this programme. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.